This week I'm cooking the cake that killed Rasputin, minus the cyanide. Rasputin, a man who dared to ask the question, cake or death? So today I'm going to be cooking the alleged final meal that killed Rasputin, how to make it, what it tastes like, and finding out a little bit more about the history of Rasputin's food habits. In 1916, Grigory Rasputin, one of the most mysterious figures of modern history, was assassinated. To some, he was a saint who healed the Tsar's son. To others, he was a devil, a man who they would call the Mad Monk, but would also go into bathhouses for his testicles to be washed. To others, he was a traitor, using his influence on the Russian imperial family and feeding secrets back to a German spy network. Even the manner in which he died is hotly disputed, but one of the most consistent accounts is that in 1916 he met his end after being lured to a meal held by some Russian patriots who were intent on killing him. So, gonna try and recreate that meal. As we'll come on to later, the accounts around Rasputin's last meal are a bit divisive, but they also disagree on what food it included. The most consistent story is that he died eating a meal of cakes and wine that had been laced with cyanide. I've read some online sources that say they were honey cakes, but the accounts of two of his alleged murderers say otherwise. Prince Yusupov, who led the alleged murder plot, wrote in his memoir that the poison was hidden in chocolate cakes. However, the politician Vladimir Purishkovich, who was also complicit, he wrote that the poison was sprinkled into 2 plates of pink and chocolate petit fours. Whether it was honey or chocolate, Rasputin's last meal was apparently cake and wine, laced with cyanide. So, I'm going to make some pink and chocolate fondant fancies, all as an excuse to have something nice to eat while I explore the history of Rasputin's last meal. Given that he was drinking poisoned wine as well as cake, and that apparently Madeira was a favourite of his, I figured that gives me some license to drink Madeira all the way throughout. Tasty! So to get us started with our fondant fancy recipe, I've got flour, golden caster sugar, eggs, and butter. Gotta mix these together. So who was Rasputin? Grigory Rasputin was a Russian mystic known for his close association with the Romanov imperial family, particularly Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra. He rose from a peasant family in Siberia, and he went on to gain influence due to his perceived ability to heal the Tsar and Tsarina's haemophiliac son. Add the sugar to the flour. However, his influence led to controversy and accusations of manipulation, as he was seen by some as a charlatan who had a reputation for debauchery. He was referred to by some as the Mad Monk. He wasn't actually a monk and he never held a position within the Russian Orthodox Church. Some regarded him as a holy man with unique powers, while others saw him as a charlatan with a corrupting influence on the Russian imperial family. In any case, as Russia faced political turmoil, Rasputin's influence became a symbol of corruption. He was murdered in 1916 by a group of powerful men who believed that his death would disrupt German spy networks and empower the Tsar. But it actually had the opposite effect, because a year after Rasputin was murdered, the Russian Revolution led to the abdication of the Tsar. Drink some more Madeira. Could get used to that. Gonna mix this together. Do it ever so slightly off camera because my cord can't reach. So we've now got a cake batter. Oh, this is hard work. I'm going to split the batter in half at this point. So we've mixed in our cocoa powder to half the batch. We've got chocolate cake. And then to the other half, I've got some pink food colouring. I am colourblind, and things on the pink-red spectrum are particularly problematic for me to see, so this could be wildly inaccurate. I feel like I just added way too much pink food colouring, but let's see. Ah, that actually looks really pretty. So we've got 2 pretty huge petit fours, to be fair. There is a lot of speculation about what happened that night that Rasputin met his end. He apparently went to the home of Prince Yusupov, enticed by his apparent desire for Yusupov's wife, Princess Irina. And the accounts from his alleged murderer suggest that they lured Rasputin to a basement under the pretense of waiting for Princess Irina. At this point, he greedily gobbled up cakes and glasses of Madeira with enough cyanide inside to basically take down half a monastery, from what you read. Though according to the accounts of his murderers, he didn't die. When he didn't die, they wrote that he must have superhuman powers and went downstairs and shot him. The story goes that this didn't even kill him, and that a couple of hours after he'd been shot, he apparently rose up, tried to make a dash for freedom across the palace, where a person shot him for the 3rd time. He was then shot again, dumped in the icy river, and discovered a few days later. There were even rumours from the time that he was alive when he went into the river, and that there was evidence of him trying to claw his way out from under the ice. Eesh. Time for the chocolate. Could he have survived the poison? There are theories about how he might have survived the poison. One is that his murderers were inept and they didn't use enough, or maybe that they'd used expired cyanide which had lost its potency. But there's also the possibility that the poisoning never happened. There are a number of historians who dispute the theory that he was a gorging, gluttonous man, and his own daughter always disputed the cake story because she said he disliked sweet food. So there's always the possibility that the cake story was made up by his murderers to create yet another public image of this supernatural devil within human appetites. Though his love of Madeira was well known. So perhaps he may have been more tempted with the wine. So now we've got our little cakes, we're gonna put them in the oven and bake them. After 40 minutes, we're left with lovely, delicate little square muffins. Squaffins! Are squaffins a thing? Definitely gonna trademark that if not. A bit more Madeira. So while those are cooling, we're gonna turn our attention to some icing. So I'm melting 150 grams of dark chocolate with about 40 grams of butter. This feels like a good time as any to talk about Rasputin's favourite foods. He apparently likes his fresh fruit, strawberries and oranges being particular favourites. There was a chef who was tasked to create a meal in Rasputin's honour at a banquet. He came to the conclusion that Rasputin's favourite was sturgeon soup. I couldn't get my hands on sturgeon owing to the fact they're a protected species in the UK, so we're opting for death by chocolate instead. On to the pink ones. One thing his murderers got right is that he loved wine. He apparently described it as God's own remedy. So 3 hours later, we're left with 3 petit fours, which probably aren't worth dying for. Let's give this a try. They're not much to look at, but I would be very happy with chocolate cake as a last meal. Also, who knew that Madeira goes so well with chocolate cake? That's amazing. So this leads us to the main question. Did he really have cake as his last meal? I would say the answer to this rests on 2 questions. Firstly, do you believe the account of the people that murdered him and were really not happy with the level of sway he held in Russian society? And 2, do you believe in the accounts of him being a gluttonous and greedy man? On the basis of this, I would say no. He probably didn't eat these, and if he did, I don't think he was gorging himself to death. We do know he liked his wine, so it's entirely possible this had an impact. But overall, I just find it really unlikely that the murderous plottings of these people are 100% accurate without any bias. That being said, if it is true, not a bad last bite. Cheers to you for watching. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you'd like me to recreate from food history, and do consider subscribing.